Metropolitan Council. Today is Wednesday, September 12th, 2018, and I call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next order of business is approval of the minutes from our August 22nd meeting. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item is public invitation for folks, members of the public who wish to address the council on matters not on the agenda. And I don't believe that we have anyone signed up, but is there anyone that would like to address the council? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next is the reports from the standing committees. And we'll start with Community Development. Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee has four grant awards to bring to the council this evening. The first is 2018-202 Park Acquisition Opportunity Fund, or PAOF, grant for West Mississippi Regional Trail in Three Rivers Park District. It's the Goodin property. A little background, the West Mississippi River Regional Trail is a destination trail located in Hennepin County, and when complete, it will run through Dayton, Champlin, Brooklyn Park, and Brooklyn Center. Three Rivers Park District has requested a grant to acquire this 7.3-acre property in Dayton to support development of the trail. The property is an identified in-holding within the council-approved alignment of the trail and includes 830 feet of shoreline within the Mississippi River Corridor critical area. And the council will match this grant through the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund and council match. The committee found that the acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, appropriation requirements, and the West Mississippi River Regional Trail Master Plan, which this council approved April 25th, 2018. So, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I move that the council take the following actions: approve a grant of up to $325,839 to Three Rivers Park District to acquire this parcel. Authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Consider reimbursing the Three Rivers Park District for up to $108,613 from its share of a future Regional Parks Capital Improvement Program for costs associated with this item, and then finally inform Three Rivers Park District that the council does not, under any circumstances, represent or guarantee that future reimbursement will be granted, and expenditure of local funds never entitles a park agency to reimbursement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Councilmember Commerce, the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next grant to bring to the council is for the Baker Carver Regional Trail in Three Rivers Park District. This is the Hodgson property. And a little bit of background on this grant. When complete, the Baker Carver River Regional Trail will be 17 miles long, traveling through the communities of Medina, Maple Plain, Independence, Minnetrista, Victoria, and Lake Township. Three Rivers Park District has requested a grant to acquire a 55.9-acre property in Minnetrista in support of the development of the trail. The property is an identified in-holding within the council-approved alignment of the trail, and the council will fund this grant through the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and council match. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the council take the following actions. First, approve a grant of up to $474,355 to Three Rivers Park District to acquire this parcel at 7300 Halstead Drive in Minnetrista for the Baker Carver Regional Trail. Authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council. Consider reimbursing the Three Rivers Park District for up to $158,118 from its share of a future Regional Parks Capital Improvement Program for costs associated with this item. And finally, again, inform the district that the council does not, under any circumstances, represent or guarantee that future reimbursement will be granted, and that expenditure of local funds never entitles a park agency to reimbursement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third grant is a grant for Great Cloud Island Regional Park in Washington County. This is the Cartaric property. Great Cloud Island Regional Park is located in southern Washington County and lies along Moores Lake, a water basin associated with the Mississippi River Basin. This property is a 4.2-acre in-holding within the council-approved boundaries of the regional park, lying on the northern side of the island. And the council will fund this grant through the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund and council match. Again, the committee found that this acquisition is consistent with the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan, appropriation requirements, and the master plan for Great Cloud Island Regional Park. It's also consistent with all requirements of the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund. Therefore, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I move that the council take the following two actions. First, approve a grant of up to $435,083 to Washington County to acquire the two parcels comprising 4.24 acres at 10870 Great Cloud Island Drive in Great Cloud Island Township for the regional park. And secondly, authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of the council.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Councilmember Commerce, one more.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The fourth grant to bring forth from the committee is a grant for Big Marine Park Reserve Regional Park in Washington County. This is the Bofen property. Big Marine Park Reserve is located in the northern part of the county, and the 8.3-acre property is an in-holding within the council-approved boundaries of the Park Reserve. The property includes a portion of Pitzel Pond. It's adjacent to Big Marine Lake, and it's primarily wooded. The agency plans on removing the house and other structures after undertaking a bidding process to determine whether the buildings can be repurposed. The council plans to fund the parcel with the house through the Parks and Trails Legacy Fund, the two undeveloped parcels through the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, and then the council will match each of these state sources. Therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the council take the following actions. First, a grant of up to $451,924 to Washington County to acquire three parcels comprising this 8.3-acre Bofen property at 18135 Margot Avenue in the city of Scandia for Big Marine Park Reserve. And secondly, authorize the Community Development Director to execute the grant agreement and restrictive covenant on behalf of this council.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on this item? I think I'm totaling a fair amount of money in grants that we just are approving. So I think that's pretty exciting to support our regional parks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we'll move on to the Management Committee. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is business item 2018-223. This is the labor agreement with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District Lodge number 77. The International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District Lodge number 77 contract expired on December 31, 2017. This organization represents 55 employees. Following recommendation from the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District Lodge number 77 Executive Board, the machinist membership ratified the agreement on August 9, 2018. Highlights of the agreement include 3-year contract effective January 1, 2018, expiring December 31, 2020. For each year, the agreement at 2.5% general increase for all eligible employees in the bargaining unit. Consistent with the medical cost sharing policy established by the Council, the agreement includes a gradual increase in the employee responsibility for health insurance premiums, with the eventual goal of reaching a 20% employee family contribution and a 10% single contribution. The cost of the labor agreement was reviewed by Finance and was negotiated within the economic parameters established by the Council. This item was reviewed and approved by the Management Committee at its meeting on August 22nd. Madam Chair, the Management Committee moves approval to authorize the Regional Administrator to enter into a labor agreement with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, District Lodge Number 77, effective January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2020.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we move on to the Transportation Committee. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2018-227 is the same week item, and it deals with the C line. Metro Transit holds the contract for design and construction engineering of the C line and associated street improvements on Penn Avenue. Following execution of this contract, Hennepin County added 0.6 miles of full street reconstruction to the scope of the combined project. The addition of more street reconstruction required additional scope for design, outreach and communications, construction administration, and materials testing for this contract. This amendment brings the additional county funds into the contract for this purpose, along with council funds for the C-line related scope. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute a sole source contract amendment with HDR Engineering to increase the contract value by $793,999 to a total contract value of $592,404.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Councilmember Rodriguez, the next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2018-231 is also a same week item, and it deals with the change order authority for the C line. An additional request from Hennepin County and the City of Minneapolis to add to the construction scope necessitates additional change order authority for the efficient management of the construction contract. All funds for additional change order authority are available through an agreement with Hennepin County for Penn Avenue improvements. No additional council funds are committed through this action. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that the Metropolitan Council authorize additional change order authority for the C line Penn Avenue construction contract by an additional $720,000 above the currently authorized construction contract change order authority for revised change order authority of $2,017,611, which is a 15.5% of the initial contract value.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item is a joint report from the Environment and Transportation Committees. Councilmember Rummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Business item 2018-216 is the same week request for sole source procurement for eBuilder. eBuilder is an internet-based project management system that standardizes and improves project communication. Environmental Services Division is seeking to set up and train staff on its use. Metro Transit has already been using this tool and will be renewing its subscription. eBuilder is a tool that increases communication and accountability between offices, consultants, contractors, and other project stakeholders. It provides a single location to submit, approve, and access project documents. eBuilder has been utilized during several transit projects with outstanding results. Each project office or department that utilizes this system has expanded its functionality with continued improvements in project outcomes. By procuring this system as an enterprise solution, it will provide benefits to all Metropolitan Council divisions. Metro Transit and Environmental Services negotiated a lower overall contract cost by combining their negotiation efforts. Therefore, Madam Chair and members, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorizes the regional administrator to award and execute a sole source procurement contract with eBuilder, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $1,820,000 over a 5-year period. This period begins in September 2018 and lasts until November 2023, with the cost divided between the Environmental Services, $1,183,000, and Metro Transit, $637,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? Member Munt.
Madam Chair, I'm excited about this because I think it demonstrates the efficiencies that we can achieve when we break out of our silos and work together.
Thank you. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we have a joint report of the Community Development and Environment Committees. Going back to Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is item 2018-220, the same week item, and it's the City of Landfall Villages 2040 Comprehensive Plan adoption. It's a big step. On behalf of the committee, I'd move to authorize the comprehensive plan for the city. The City of Landfall is located in west central Washington County, as you know, and is surrounded on all sides by the City of Oakdale. It lies near the border with Maplewood on the west and Woodbury to the south, Lake Elmo to the east. Thrive MSP 2040 designates the city as suburban and forecasts minimal growth within the community through the year 2040. The city's plan appropriately guides land at densities and in patterns consistent with the suburban community designation land use policies. One note, there's a minor correction for the staff report to omit language on page 4 under water supply that reads, quote, "The community relies primarily on private wells and, although there are private wells in the city, most of the residents get water that is supplied by Oakdale." So with that change, the committee found that the city's 2040 plan conforms to regional system plans, is consistent with council policies, and is compatible with the plans of adjacent and affected jurisdictions. So, Madam Chair, on behalf of the Community Development Committee, I'd like to move that we authorize the City of Landfall to place the 2040 Comprehensive Plan in effect, revise the city's forecast as shown in Table 1 in the review record, and lastly, advise the city to implement the advisory comments in the review record for transportation and housing. And then also carry the recommendations of the Environment Committee, first to approve the City of Landfall's comprehensive sewer plan component of the city's 2040 comp plan, and advise the city to implement the Environment Committee advisory comments on page 2 of this report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on this item? I see Mayor Sudacamp from Landfall is here. Thank you for being here and want to congratulate you on completing your comprehensive plan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you. Next, we move on to other business. 2018-235 is the appointment to the Livable Communities Advisory Committee. This is filling an unexpected vacancy for development finance, and I would entertain a motion to support the appointment of Elise Durbin to the Livable Communities Advisory Committee.
I'll make a motion.
Second that.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Thank you. The next item is an information item on the Transportation Policy Plan comment update. So I'd invite Amy Benowitz and Michelle Fury up to give us an update. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Thank you. I'm Michelle Fury. I manage the public involvement team here at the council, and I'll be presenting the majority of the presentation this afternoon. And with me is Amy Benowitz, the Deputy Director in MTS, and she'll be here if they have any technical questions that I can't handle. Today we're going to be spending a little bit of time just going over what we heard in the Transportation Policy Plan public comment process, who we heard from, some general themes, some themes that were prominent in the feedback that we heard, and then some other things. And what we have for you, in addition to the summary that you'll see on the slides, is some comparative or some background text with the specific changes we're recommending and some of the major portions of the plan, just so that you have a sense of where some of the changes might be placed, and then you have an opportunity to ask some questions. There was a lot of text on a few of these, so we didn't want to put them on the slides and make you have to read it all from the screen. So during the course of the public comment process, which was open from late June through mid-August, or late May through mid-August, we received approximately 300 comments from about 150 people and organizations. At the public hearing itself, we had very good attendance, but only about 25 people made testimony that evening. So about half of the people that were there actually made testimony. The majority of the testimony that you all heard at that public hearing was related to the regional transit fleet being more comprised of more electric vehicles than it is today, and in fact an entire electric fleet was one of the options presented. Concern around diesel fuel use, which is tied to the types of buses that we use. The notion of more equitable policing practices that were raised by the folks there, and then general climate change concerns. All of these were tied together. And to accompany that, we did receive 90 emails from people throughout the region that reiterated the same themes and were part of an organized campaign, but there were individual edits to each email, so they all had unique elements to them. We received formal letters and feedback from the following organizations and local governments. The Anoka County Parks and Recreation Group sent some comments in, a few related primarily to the regional bicycle transportation network. The ARC of Minnesota provided a significant number of comments related to accessibility and planning for people with disabilities and seniors in the future. They were largely making their comments around the strategies that are in the plan. Carver County Public Works provided some feedback both on transit and highways. The City of Minneapolis had an extensive letter that included a lot of technical detail and very comprehensive review of the plan. Dakota County provided some comments that were across the modes. Ramsey County Public Works as well. The Southwest Corridor Transportation Coalition, which is in the southwest part of the metro, includes Carver County and the corridors of 169 and 212. And then Southwest Transit provided a small comment about how revenues are captured, and Washington County sent a letter which was short but expressed appreciation for the staff involvement in the process and actually said that most of their concerns were met. So they didn't have any specific comments beyond that. And we actually received among these formal letters quite a few pieces of feedback that related to the extensive amount of time that staff spent with technical staff, with policymakers through the TAB and technical advisory committee processes to assure that all of the concerns that were expressed there were really well addressed in the plan. As I mentioned before, the major comment themes, at least the ones that were dominant in terms of volume, were related to the same things that you heard at the public hearing. There's a desire by a group of folks in the region here that we electrify the regional fleet, and they were disappointed with the recent news of a diesel leak at one of our bus garages. Several of the commenters also said they would like the council to consider implementing a free fare system and expanding the TAB program. They were concerned about our policing procedures and would like to see either fewer officers on our transit system or a different approach to policing. And then there was also general support for more funding, both for highways and transit throughout the system, generally expressed in many of the letters, but also several members of the public also expressed the same. There were also a few smaller, less prominent, but just as important comments that we wanted to take a few minutes to highlight, primarily because many of them did come through our online site and some of the comments that we received by email. People generally express support for better transit connections to jobs, to regional destinations throughout the region. They also expressed a desire for safer bike and ped infrastructure so that the planning would be intentional regarding that. General advice related to accessibility extended beyond the ARC letter, but several other participants said the same thing. We had a handful of comments about some of the emerging transit ways. As you know, there's some discussion about the Riverview Corridor in St. Paul. We didn't get one solid opinion one way or the other. We had opinions on all sides. And one of the pieces of advice that we offered in the responses was that the Riverview issue is not a part of this current transportation plan, but might be an amendment in the future. And then we also heard a lot about streetcars generally. Some of the comments related to other streetcar lines in Minneapolis, for example, that are being considered, and support for streetcars, but also support for transit generally. And then there was also some folks who said that they didn't support streetcars. So it's not as though it was a loud group of folks, but it was definitely present, and we just wanted to make sure that you're aware that those were part of the process too. There was also pretty prominent support for arterial BRT investment throughout the comments, both the formal letters that we received from agencies as well as individuals were very much advising the council that we should be continuing to promote that as a good mode of investment for transit investment. And as I noted before, many of these comments came from individuals, but were echoed by some of the themes that we saw in the letters as well. So for the rest of the time, we wanted to spend a little bit more time talking through some of the details of the responses related to the larger scale comments that we heard throughout the course of the public process. And one of the things that you'll hear from staff is that though these issues were raised during the transportation policy plan process, they aren't always directly related to long range planning. They're operational issues that come out when we talk about long range planning. So there are some places that we can address these things, but there are also other policy conversations that you all will likely have to engage in. So we just wanted to highlight those for you as we're considering what happens moving forward. The first issue is the one related to electrifying the regional fleet. And just as some points of information, Metro Transit is planning to put together a plan related to a transition to electric vehicles, and that is expected to be ready by the middle of next year. That will take a broad look at all of the potential impacts to our system operations, the infrastructure that will have to be installed in order to move to a regional fleet, the capacity related to electric vehicles today and how far they can actually go, which isn't as far as our other vehicles can go, and what that means for planning in terms of routes and where those things might be. The C line will have between 8 and 15 fully electric articulated buses when it opens next year. So there is progress being made in the new operations that are coming online. And there's a pilot project that will evaluate those operating ranges, especially in cold weather periods, because there is an impact there. And of course, as you all know, funding is a factor in a capital investment of this level. The issue of implementing a free fare system, as you know, the fares in our system are only about a quarter of the overall revenue, but that is still a quarter of the overall revenue. And there's no sources identified in the transportation plan or anywhere else, for that matter, to take up that piece of the revenue pie. So what the transportation policy plan does is identify where the revenues are coming from over the long term. And right now, we know that those will be paid through fares. So if there were a decision made at some point, that could affect that. But for this transportation plan, that's the situation that we have. And there are certainly expectations that you're aware of from policymakers that fares will support operations. So until that policy direction changes, that's our response to this suggestion at this point. But what we did do is try to highlight more of the opportunities for the Transit Assistance Program and other ways to buffer some of the real impacts to the members of this community who either rely on transit or can benefit from the low-income fare program. So we put some additional information in there, and we also will look for additional ways to highlight the TAP program and its availability to riders, just as a matter of course as we reach out to customers and as we promote that program. The policing procedures question, at least at this point, the response is that we need a police present for the safety of our riders, drivers, and the community. And the police department highlighted that the calls for service have been growing over time, but the overall crime rate on transit is low. And they would say that is as a result of their presence on our vehicles. But there's also the requirement that there be a peace officer involved in the fare compliance piece. So that at least at this point, that is a business practice that is part of the council system. What we did do in the plan, though, there are a couple of places where it is highlighted that there should not be that the practices of local governments in supporting the safety of the transportation system, and that includes all of the system as well as the transit that is operated through the communities in the region, is that there are two strategies in the section that talks about the safety and security of the transportation system that identify two supportive local actions in two ways that highlight the fact that enforcement programs should not perpetuate or create racial inequities. And that is that was in the existing draft, but that is fairly recently added language. And what we also recommend is that we include additional information that highlights that people have different experiences with law enforcement in this region, and there are also elements of that in our transit system. Just to be clear that there are data that have been collected, there is still additional study that can be done, and just to really highlight that it is not something that we're unaware of, and it is something that the transportation plan at least acknowledges in terms of how local governments respond to these things. And this is just additional information about what I just said. But the most complete piece is the final question on your handout here. There's a lot of information there that kind of highlights what I just said. And then before we get into questions, we just wanted to let you know sort of what's next. We're here today to talk through some of these things and give you an opportunity to ask us questions about other things we've heard and the specific comments that we've presented to you today. This goes to the tab for action on Wednesday next week. And then it will move to the Transportation Committee, the first meeting in October. It would be nice if it were just August. And then the full council, the last meeting in October. So we're on track to transmit this document to the federal government here yet this year. And Amy can talk to you more about what that requires. But I just know that y'all will be talking about approving this in October. With that, I would just like to open it up to any questions or concerns that you have.
Any questions or comment? Member Month.
Madam Chair, ladies, I fully appreciate that the TPP is a planning document and not an operations document, but given the importance of policing both at Metro Transit and society in general, I think that merits a strategy that stands alone versus one that's rolled into, right now it's rolled into B6, which includes things like zero traffic fatalities. Another one, B5, is about coordination and collaboration with other police departments. It seems to me that this is important enough that it should be a single strategy to ensure that we don't create or perpetuate racial inequities, both in terms of our police and public safety actions and in terms of our fair enforcement programs. I feel like the public's perception would be that we are burying it if we roll it in to other strategies. And I also feel that we need to distinguish Metro Transit Police from other police forces that may not be doing as much as we are doing to produce equitable outcomes.
Thank you. Any other comments? Member?
Madam Chair,
Sure.
I'd just like to echo Councilmember Munt's request. I think it makes sense. And I do think there is a perception, at least that's what I'm hearing in the community, that we actually need to take more proactive steps to ensure that all citizens are treated with respect and dignity, as well as our drivers and others that are a part of our transit system. And I think by separating that out and actually having a real discussion on these issues, that we can actually ensure that that is indeed the case.
So I have a clarifying question for staff, and is that, so in this, the plan response text, there's a bolded component and then there's the unbolded component. Well, it goes strategy B6 and then while engineering an emergency and then the next paragraph. Is all of that part of the planned response? Flipping to the following page, even including the underlined portion.
So just to clarify, Madam Chair, the handout that you have in front of you includes the entire section that exists in the plan today. The underlying text is new.
Oh, okay.
The rest of it exists in the draft plan that was put out for public comment earlier this year.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Madam
Oh, sure.
Chair, if I might, I think just to clarify for maybe some members who aren't as familiar with the TPP, we have a chapter on strategies. Strategies are actions, action statements aimed at both the council and our local partners. So they're actions that transportation entities can take to help further us towards our stated regional goals. So the section that you're looking at is specifically the safety and security goal. And then within it, we have strategies that we're suggesting can be taken to move us towards that goal. And what we have done is added explanatory text. That's what you're seeing in the underlying section. And I think what Councilmember Munt is suggesting is that rather than just adding in this explanatory text, that we actually call out a fully separate action. And in my mind, the action would be something similar to the statement that is already in the plan. It could be a little broader, something about ensuring that enforcement, that the council and its transportation partners ensure that enforcement programs do not create or perpetuate racial inequities when enforcing on transportation systems or something to that effect. And then we would develop explanatory language under that and likely take this underlined language and move it under there, under that new strategy. And then think about developing other supportive local actions, which might entail police training in equitable policing, or I'd have to think a little bit more about what the local actions, supportive actions might be. So it would be a general strategy aimed at enforcement on transportation systems, which would encompass Metro Transit. It would also encompass the State Patrol or other local enforcement agencies that are in charge of enforcing laws on our transportation system. So it would be a broad strategy, but it would be specifically aimed at not having or encouraging and making sure we have equitable policing taking place on the transportation system. So I think that's kind of the intent, and luckily you did give us some time to think about it. And I think that would be achievable on our part. We could put some language together probably tomorrow and distribute it. And then when we go in front of TAB next Wednesday, have that as part of what we're suggesting be changed within the TPP.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support that. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I do appreciate that there's language in there saying that people do experience our system differently, and particularly people of color, and that it's not just our transit system, but also roadways. So I appreciate that. And I do want to recognize that there were calls for less police or no police on our transit system. And while that was, those calls were made at the public hearing, we are also hearing from others that they want more police on the system, our drivers, and some of the public, and that's evidenced by the fact that calls for service are up, even though crime remains very low on transit. And I also think I'm really grateful that staff recognize that our police department has made an extensive effort to address these inequities, and that effort is ongoing. So I appreciate that in the response. So, but I would support an additional strategy on this.
Any other comments? Member Latowski.
Thanks. I want to pivot a little bit to the electric bus section. And I am support of a well understood and researched strategy towards moving towards this. And so I think you need to put something in here. I just think this language sounds a little defensive, and so just kind of making it not so much an explanation of why we're not doing it now, but an explanation of what we're doing might be go a little further.
Thank you. Other comments? Member Munt.
Madam Chair, a question regarding the electrification. One of the bullets said that we hope to have as many as 130 electric buses in the fleet in the next 6 years. Is that hybrid electrics and electrics, or is it just the plug-in zero-emission buses that we're talking about?
Councilmember Mont, I believe it's the fully electric, but I'm going to let Brian Lamb address that.
Welcome, Brian Lamb.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Councilmember Munt, to your question, it is fully electric. What we are doing is that the 2007 era hybrid buses are coming to their retirement schedule, and rather than to reinvest in hybrid, we want to move that technology forward to full electric.
Thank you. Great. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I might make
Please.
one comment. The TPP public comment report will be online on Friday, I believe, as part of the tab action. And so I did want to emphasize that while we're talking today about 4 or 5 high-level comments, we got a lot of comments that also resulted in what I would call very small text changes. A little phrase added here or there, or a sentence recognizing something or emphasizing it more heavily. And those were based on a lot of the comments, a lot from Minneapolis, but also from our other partners. And so I do want to emphasize that the changes that are taking place within the TPP are quite a bit more substantial than you're seeing in front of you just based on these 4 comments, but they don't really rise to the occasion of hearing it from more than one entity.
Great. Member Bunt.
Madam Chair, my observation in having conversations in my district about the TPP is that young people care deeply about a clean energy future, and they're people that we're hoping will choose to hop on our buses, and they want, I mean, I'm talking to students from Hopkins and Minnetonka high schools who want to make good choices for the air and the water, and I really sense that needs to be an important part of what we do in the next 10 years, because young people care deeply about a clean energy future, and I'm hearing that from them.
Excellent. Other thoughts or comments? Well, I would just say thank you for the summary. I appreciate it, and look forward to seeing some of the responses to the feedback from tonight. I think that concludes other business. Do we have any council member reports? Would anyone like to share a report? Member Rodriguez.
At the risk of getting in trouble. I continue to work in the Shared Mobility Collaborative, and we're just trying to keep up with that fast-changing industry. And we are forming a short-term task force on equity to help design it and help operationalize it in our work. And if anybody knows anybody that they think would be interested on that and survey on that short-term task force, please let me know. I also attended Metro City's Transportation Committee meeting last Monday, and Judd gave a presentation on our structural transit deficit. And I thought the presentation and the discussion were really effective and good discussion.
Great. Any other reports that folks want to share? Seeing none, I'll just share really quickly. I had the opportunity to attend the MBTA board meeting in the week of August 27th, so that was the first time that I had been able to participate in that. We also have a delegation here right now from DeKalb County and outside of Atlanta, who's really interested in looking at the way we're building out our transit system. And I know Metro Transit, Brian Lamb, and Nick Thompson and staff spent some time with them today. It's kind of fun to have folks come here to try to learn from what we do in the Twin Cities. It was a nice opportunity, a really good energy to participate in that. So if there are no other reports, Council, Regional Administration. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.